Yeah, I think they're calling these people extremists, left-wing militants and all the rest of it. These are the people that educate our children, that we entrust to nurture our youngsters, and it's an insult for the government to be saying that. These people are desperate for a pay rise. Many of them are young people that have studied hard to get where they are, and they need a reward. They can't get decent housing. They're suffering from the cost of living crisis, as are millions of other people in our country. Well, we've got a massive rally outside 10 Downing Street, and there's a lot of teachers here, train drivers, public sector workers, and they've all got one thing in common. They all need a pay rise, they need their services funded properly, and they need decent conditions. So it's part of a wave of strike action that's been happening across Britain, starting last summer with the RMT, I suppose, and it's reached this crescendo. Hopefully it will get bigger. I think it will probably need to get bigger before we get a breakthrough.
I actually just saw Johnny Mercer, who is senior Tory MP, just slipped into Downing Street and walked past and didn't engage with the rally. Would you say that's quite allegoric of how they've reacted to the disputes in general?
Yeah, I think they're calling these people extremists, left-wing militants and all the rest of it. These are the people that educate our children, that we entrust to nurture our youngsters, and it's an insult for the government to be saying that. These people are desperate for a pay rise. Many of them are young people that have studied hard to get where they are, and they need a reward. They can't get decent housing. They're suffering from the cost of living crisis, as are millions of other people in our country. And from a government minister and a set of Tories that are just indulged in corruption and incompetence, it's an insult to working people. And the best thing that the Tories could do at this time for this country is to get out of the way and call a general election, so we can get some competent people in to try and help us solve some of our problems.
When you first started going out on strike, there was a lot of talk about how teachers wouldn't be able to get to work or nurses wouldn't be able to get to work. I mean, now they're all on strike. What would you say to that?
Well, when we started, the pundits started saying, well, why should you get a pay rise and the nurses shouldn't, or the teachers are working hard? And what's happened is that the message that we were given, that everyone deserves a pay rise, has caught fire in this country. And if we've played a part in inspiring that in the RMT to other workers, I'm very happy about that. But what we need, and what all workers need, is a deal. We need a square deal for our people that doesn't cost them all their conditions, that isn't self-funded, that means an injection of money from the government and the employers so that people can make a decent living. That's all we're asking for, is the ability to make a decent living. Some of these people haven't had a pay rise for 12 or more years compared to inflation, and that's got to change. So the government's got to listen, and the country's got to listen, and hopefully we'll get that change soon.
I think the way that it's going is the government won't give an inflation-busting pay rise. Do you think that's something to do with perhaps the government are waiting to see if inflation will fall in the next year at all?
Well, inflation falling is just a slowdown of the increase. These increases in prices and the cost of living are permanent. Prices don't fall back down. They haven't fallen back down since the Second World War. So these are permanent increases. And if we're not careful, people will be permanently poorer. So, whether we get inflation busting, inflation matching, or addressing the cost of living, whatever way it goes, we've got to have a negotiated settlement. And these offers, the PCS has been offered 2%. We've been offered 4 and 5%, but we didn't have a pay rise for 3 years before that. It's just not good enough. And what they want from us in return is too much. So we're consulting our people. I'm sure these unions would consult their people on any decent offer, but there are no offers on the table, and there are no real negotiations in place at the moment, and that's got to change.
On a wider note, the IMF yesterday predicted that we will be the only nation in the G7 to actually shrink our economy in the next year. I mean, when you look at the rail infrastructure, when you look at the way that pay is going for teachers, do you think that, what do you think the state of Britain is at the moment?
Well, one way to grow our economy is to give people enough to live on, and then they'd have money to spend in the shops and on the services that would keep the country going. So I think this country is shrinking because we've got the wrong government. I think the economy is in free fall, and we haven't got the right set of policies. So we need that green revolution. We need investment in our services, and we need to let industry be free to make deals and produce the goods and services we need. But at the moment, we've got a decayed government that's on the point of collapse. And the quicker we get rid of it, the better we would all be. And I think our economy could get back on the right track with a new set of people.
What's your message to striking workers today?
Keep going, stick together. Unity is our strength, and it's the unity of these workers that will put this government under pressure and finally bust through this austerity. So we've got to keep united and keep going.